Hi, I'm Andrew, and yeah, I'm based just over there, and I've got a startup company called One Cast, and we're making a personal radio station. So that means you open your mobile phone, it says, "Good morning, Andrew. The weather's this. Here are some emails. It's a friend's birthday today, based on Facebook. Lets you know some important news stories, podcasts, and play some music you like as well, and puts that all into a continuous radio stream." And we started this about 20 months ago, this journey. And my co-founder, who was going to do this, is actually overseas doing fundraising at the moment. So I think tonight's theme for me will be getting stuff done and what we've learned. So just a sort of a broad overview of where we've been. And that's Chrome downloading Office about half an hour ago. Set this up. So, as I mentioned, we started with a vision for personal radio, so something that's personalized just for you. And we started the company with just 3 friends. So myself, Ed, who's business dev, and Long, who's our product manager and designer, and myself, dev lead. So this whole journey actually started with just a phone call. I was still based in Melbourne working at my old job. Ed was in Sydney working at Groupon, and Long was still making money off his online blog. And Long actually called Ed one night and goes, "Do you have this problem I have? Because I still travel and I'm sometimes too busy to look at my screen. I'd rather hear news or hear entertainment, especially when I'm driving." And Ed found this to have the same problem because he was traveling like a good hour to Groupon day to day in Sydney. So we actually all got together and agreed this was a cool problem to work on. And actually put together a really simple slide deck to pitch at venture capital that are just sitting over there as well. This slide deck was black and white. It had 20 slides or so, had a few spelling mistakes here and there. It was not that great. But what was important that we found out was, so the slide deck graphics aren't important. The idea is quite important, but the team's ability to execute is most important. So at venture capital actually usually funded startups that had a lot more progress than we did, especially from an idea. But they enjoyed what we were talking about and had a feeling that we could actually deliver on what we were talking about. So that's the reason we actually got a initial investment from them. So we decided to actually do this thing. So we quit our jobs, moved into the workspace just in the corner over there, and began working on our personal radio app, One Cast. So first, we powered this mobile app using PhoneGap. So this is a prototype we built. That's actually in Windows 8, but these are PhoneGap apps. And PhoneGap, if you guys are aware or not, it's the HTML5 sort of development framework for mobiles. The reason we initially decided to use PhoneGap was a few things. First, our team size is 3, developers is 2. We wanted to try and do cross-platform all at the same time, so as many devices as we could. I had an iPhone, Ed had an Android, and Long had a Windows phone. And we also thought this would get us to market much quicker. Surprisingly, there were a few problems. So PhoneGap got us like 80% of the way there in building it, but it sort of started to show the problems very quickly. The last 20% of actually building this app was incredibly difficult and just not worth the effort. So a few things that popped up were just responsiveness, just the performance, and again, this is 20 months ago, it's probably better now, it was just very poor for a mobile app. We were doing a lot of stuff with audio, and so we had to write custom code anyway to sort of interface with PhoneGap to do, say, fading between soundtracks, streaming media from multiple servers, and it sort of lost that ability to be helpful to us. So one of the learnings we actually got from this was really just pick one platform. In our case, it was iPhone first, and just make it native and awesome there as well. This actually helps too with a small team because when we have new product features to work on and things like that, we only have to edit that one mobile app, and we don't have to repeat the process for iPhone and Android when we have a small team. So when we were working on this mobile app, which is our personal radio, we heard about this thing called BizSpark, and Microsoft have this program where you get free software and license keys and all that stuff. But they're also having a pitching session in Sydney, and there was some prizes involved and some press. So we thought, hey, that sounds pretty cool. But one-to-one cast, our radio apps, they're nowhere near ready. So we actually built this other app called SoundGecko, and this one was actually native in iPhone. That was built in 2 days in a Sydney hotel room. And it was made from some scraps that we had from basically the prototype we were making, plus some back-end infrastructure that we were still working on. And we sort of made this to a few things. First, be able to pitch. Second, to help us validate our idea very quickly. We knew our radio app was a good 6 months at least away. So we made SoundGecko as a way to test, will people like something that reads your news articles? So SoundGecko, you send it a web URL or something, and it'll take the text from the page and just read it out in a computer voice. We were very hesitant to see whether people would enjoy this sort of thing, and we find some people do, and surprisingly not, some people don't like that at all. But it helped actually identify our market. So we found a lot of customers that really actually find something like this useful, and that validated we were on a good path to a personal radio app. Interestingly enough too, the app was approved via Apple 60 seconds before we pitched, so that was really cool. And learnings too. We got a lot of press after doing the pitch, some investor and industry contacts. So this was like the first sign that, hey, there's benefits to pitching and there's benefits to getting your name out there and brand. I'm going to jump like a few months here, but then we heard about Optus Innovate. So Optus Innovate is the fundraising program done by Optus, which is backed by Singtel, the telco in Singapore. So this was again just pitching, a much more highly refined pitch than the one we gave a few months earlier. And we got a lot of help from both the venture capital guys and just people in this space. We would do pitches just at lunchtime and have people look, try and understand what we're talking about, get feedback, people ask questions and make us really think about our business strategy, how we're going to make money, how we're going to do this, who's helping you, what are your competitors, all these questions that are going to be fired at us anyway during the pitch, and that was actually really helpful. And thankfully, we were one of the 2 teams to secure funding from this first round. So definitely we found it useful to practice pitches and get advice from other entrepreneurs who have pitched, and just even feedback from friends and family. We also got further funding from University of Melbourne MAP program. So the University of Melbourne last year basically started giving some funding. It's basically 20 grand, no equity take, if you're part of the Melbourne Uni network. And we also got a bit of more funding from friends and family. So funding helps, obviously. So we started this business with just bootstrapping, as pretty common. And so we didn't have any salaries and we were just living off savings. And also we had to pay for business expenses like legals, incorporation, minor things, but still it adds up over time. Funding let us start to pay for all of those things, as well as a wage to start covering rent and food. And actually we were thinking, well, if we've got this money from Optus, like what sort of amount should we be taking? And it's a really simple answer actually. It's like enough so you're not worried about food and rent. Because if you're worried about that, then you're not going to be concentrating on your startup, but you want to leave as much as possible in the business, obviously, because that's your runway, and that helps pay for employees and other costs. And thankfully also that let us do our first hire. So our first hire took a really long time to find. We did job ads and all that thing, and you sort of have to constantly be seeking someone to hire them. And find someone that's like a rock star, because the first hire, especially in our case, we have so much work to do at that time that we really needed someone that could instantly hit the ground running and could add like 10 times their value. And it was really awesome to find someone who we worked with at Melbourne Uni, and they helped us launch SoundGecko version 2 and a few other things. And we're still actually hiring now, and it just takes this long process. I found, at least my experience and a few of my friends, hiring in Melbourne seems to be quite difficult. Maybe I'm just looking or posting ads in the wrong place. So after we pitched SoundGecko on the stage, we actually decided to continue turning it into a product. And we actually worked on version 2 of SoundGecko, which is just more features and stuff, and visited San Francisco to launch that at TechCrunch Disrupt. So that the visit to San Fran was more of a, industry thing. So we wanted to get meet new investors. We wanted to get ourselves known. We wanted to meet industry partners. So this is people in content, and get our name out there. We had a lot of people, thankfully, from all of this press actually reach out to us for once, which was very cool. So we even had people in the radio industry going, I like what you're doing, or I like where it sounds like you're heading. We should work together. So that inbound contact, instead of going the other way, was actually really cool. So definitely press events and things like that just get you on other people's radar. A huge thing here, though, is definitely make use of government grants. So there's state and federal grants that'll pay for like half your travel costs or the tickets to get yourself over there. It's quite easy once you've done the first one. They're pretty much template responses for the rest, and they're thousands of dollars, which as a startup, it's very useful to have some money. So then after that, we came back and continued to work on One-to-One Cast, our radio app, which we later renamed Omny. So it started as One-to-One Cast, which is one-to-one, you to me, but people didn't seem to get that. So then we switched it to Allowed, and then we had like trademark infringements or something silly like that. And so then we changed it to Omny, and that's our current working title, which is in the App Store today. We managed to hire a few more people, so we've now got a team size of 8. And we found this is a constant iterative process. So we basically built our product until it felt good enough and close enough to our vision to then launch it. And once we launched it, which has only been about a month and a bit now, we're still iterating on feedback and trying to find market fit. So we haven't played all our cards, and we've got a lot of work still to do, but we're closing in on exactly what we want. And one important thing too is the hive mind. So when we were just 3 co-founders, it was quite easy to understand what everyone was working on at the same time. And we noticed we lost that as soon as you added a few more people. Suddenly, you can't always be across what everything's happening. So any communication tools, one we use is HipChat, is really helpful just to keep everyone in sync. And Trello for like project management and what people are working on is really awesome. So we only soft launched in Australia 1 month ago. So Omny is the one that reads you the weather, news, email, podcasts, and all that stuff. And because we're very content focused, we only launched in Australia while we secure Australian content, and we're planning to go abroad shortly. And day to day now, constant learning. This has been the theme for me personally in the last 20 months. I'm growing as a person and as a team. We can see each other growing so much, just having to learn things for the first time again. How do you do a pitch? I don't know, I guess we go and visit here and have a slide deck and ask questions and pitch an idea. Getting funding, hiring people, all of these new experiences. And on a personal note, just the technology side to then take care of a lot of other stuff I normally wouldn't have had to do. Constant learning. We're also working on upcoming features. So we've got a few things in the pipeline. Again, closing in on market fit. Partnerships are in progress. Partnerships have been on our radar for 12, 18 months. We've got a few, and we've got more coming. But these are definitely like business to business. They take 6 months at least just to start finding the right people, securing contracts and that sort of thing. And unsurprisingly, post-launch is just as much work on the product. Can't rest. This is a reminder in case I forgot something. No. Show the Omny app site. There we go. So, this is our app. No, you can't see that. Projector. Sweet. This is the current Omny app. Omnyapp.com. It's on iTunes. And it reads you birthdays, really simple interface, news stories, podcasts. We have a promo video here, and emails, calendars, weathers, music, all your favorite shows. This is the part where I'd suggest you please download it and give us 5-star ratings because you enjoy it so much. And yeah, does anyone have any questions at this point, I guess, because I'm just about to finish, of anything related to development, business, funding, like anything? Cause sure.
I tried SoundGecko for a bit. So with Omny, what does the voice sound like? It's always the big...
Yep.
It's never sounds... Computerized voice system doesn't sound quite right.
Yeah, so the whole text-to-speech industry is so much better than 5+ years ago, where it was very, very robotic, like Terminator style. It's a lot better now, but you can still hear it. It's not perfect. So if you're listening to something, it sounds okay, but then it'll get like a tonality wrong or an inflection wrong, and then you're brought out of back to reality, and you realize it's a computer and you hate it. So we're getting better at that. So we use third parties for the text-to-speech tech, and these third parties are getting a lot better at making it more human-like. We've got the ability now to read news articles to you in Obama's voice, for example. That's something they've been working on. So that'll come soon. And we find we've got a sweet spot with short content. So if we say, hey, it's Chris's birthday today, that's okay, or reading out an email, that's okay to be short, but you don't want necessarily the SoundGecko experience of 20+ minute articles being read in a computer voice. So we make sure to provide podcast content, which is actually spoken word, when we can. Sure.
Can I ask how you deal with the scaling? How did you architect from the very beginning the lag actually scale a little?
Sure. So just jump. Oh, sorry. So we're hosted on Windows Azure, Microsoft's cloud platform, similar to Google Compute. And the website backend that powers the mobile app is written in C#.NET, and our mobile apps are native and they communicate via REST API. So from the beginning, I knew this was, with all intention, we want this to go very big. So basically start to scale out from the beginning. So that just means not keeping, persistent state in a single web server, because when you have two or more, say session state, that's not going to work. Leverage the cloud infrastructure you get. So Azure have virtual machines. So we have things like Redis for caching that's across the whole cluster. We use things like Elasticsearch to store content metadata like podcasts and things. And that system scales well. You literally just add more machines and it'll balance everything out. We use things like blob storage. So AWS has S3 or buckets for storage for like hosting the text-to-speech files, or in some cases the podcasts themselves, and chuck a CDN in front of it. Use a traditional consumer producer queue for jobs. So for an example, when you log into Omny, we send out a job to say, hey, I need my content, and some of this content might be fetching your email or checking the local weather. So we do those in parallel and work a machine, so one or more, take stuff off a queue, process that work, and push it down to the client. One of the things we also do is maintain persistent connection from the mobile app to our servers, so that when we have content ready for you, we can send that down straight away. Because some of these operations do take more than half a second. Like checking your email, we have to go to your inbox and fetch it, turn it to speech, and then send it back. So if we held, say, a web connection open indefinitely, that's not going to work, especially on mobile. So we just have the ability to synchronously send stuff back down when it's ready. And yeah, otherwise just the web front is quite idempotent, so it's not holding any state. We use a small part of SQL Server, literally like 10 megabytes of size. It just holds like metadata of accounts and a few other things. But bigger things like what content you have installed is actually using what's called table storage, which is sharded by customer. So we shard a lot of things by customer ID or something. So, there's still going to be problems here and there. We've had one or two things, but it's not like we'll have to rip up the floorboards and change everything. There'll be more things we'll spot over time, but sure.
What's the process like with intellectual property? You guys started with like innovation patents? You did that first before you tried to upload anything? Because you did mention you had some problems with someone trying to block your suite.
We've had that before with SoundGecko. So that was only just one person that wanted to know if they could just not have their content on us. We take a very similar stance of, say, Pocket and that read it later service. I think they're the same thing. But basically you put content in and it formats it, say readability. We're not. We looked up at least Australian law, and we're not repurposing the content. We're like rebroadcasting it in a different method. So taking the text and turning it to speech. But if we wrapped that in like, hey, this is an article by SoundGecko, then we're stealing that property. But because we're just reformatting it, which is just by speech versus like readability, which formats it as a clearer single page to read, we're quite okay.
In terms of your idea, can you protect that with an innovation patent or you guys have something like that?
We've investigated patents. We've found those. We've got a lot of stuff we can be patenting, but at this time we haven't done any patents. Sure.
Don't you have to filter the content if you just send it a URL? It's not going to read out the entire page. Don't you have to try and pull out the actual content?
Yep. So we use a third-party service called Diffbot, which is actually getting very good at this. So we point it at a website and it detects this is the header, this is the title, this is the author, this is the date. So we initially just did that manually, but found these guys and it was worth the cash.
Okay. And so you've been out for a month. Can you talk about how popular it has been?
Sure. Got thousands plus of downloads. Got 1,000 plus active users. We're preparing to make some big announcements soon, which will get us a huge influx of users. We're also, one of the reasons, by the way, we did a soft launch in Australia is first off the content. So we need to make sure we're securing content. One of my co-founders, Ed, is actually overseas now doing just that, including some fundraising. And secondly, fixing leaky bucket. So we've got users coming in and some leave. And we're actually been emailing them going, why have you left? And a lot of them fall into some very common buckets of, because one example, I couldn't find my normal podcast content there. And while that doesn't fit into our, I guess, vision, like we don't want people to listen to hour-long podcasts, we want people to listen to smaller content. So like a couple of minutes at most with, over an hour. At least to try and get those users on our system, we should cater for that. So again, figuring out how to fix that and patch leaky holes. That way, when we do spend a lot of money on advertisements and a few other things, we get a lot more value for dollar.
Yeah, just quickly, how are you going to monetize the app? Are you going to chuck ads in there?
Good question. So, 2 ways. First is targeted audio advertising, obvious one. So unlike Spotify and the music services that know what music you like, we know what music you like, but also what content you like, what storage you like, what your interests are to a far more detailed level. Secondly, premium features. So whether we add more computer voices for you or little tiny things, as well as premium content. So one avenue we think we have a good advantage is traditional websites with paywalls. To me, that seems like they put up money, you got to pay to just get back to the site you had before. Whereas if it's a paywall to get access to audio content that's read out, not so much computer voice, that could be a value add.
So like Morgan Freeman's voice is an extra.
Yeah, so we've got Obama at the moment. I'd love Morgan Freeman to read me stories.
Two fairly different questions. One,
Sure.
how are you finding Windows Azure? And the other one is, are you finding you're getting many people with visual impairments using?
Yep. Okay. Windows Azure. So Microsoft. I used it since 20 months ago, and it was pretty bad. They had. So we used Windows Azure because of Microsoft gave us 60 grand credit. It's probably worth mentioning. You can apply for this as a startup. They just, as long as you sound like you have an idea and you're going to execute on it, you're not trying to scam them like mining Bitcoin or something, they will happily give that to you, and you get that for, I think, 2 years. $60,000.
Of hosting, you mean?
Credit, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, since that date, the last 9 months, Microsoft been pouring buckets of cash into Azure. Literally every 2 weeks there's a major feature release, and they're doing a lot of work. So it's becoming a lot more stable and getting a lot more feature parity with like Google and AWS. And they're definitely pouring a lot of cash into it, so I'm quite happy that I'm still on it.
And so you think it's decent now?
Yeah, it's still, I think like everything, it's still got its tiny little problems here and there, which you learn to understand and mitigate around. But after a little bit of a learning curve, it's quite useful. So one thing they've done in the last few months is, last 6 months, is it hosts things other than .NET stuff. You can host Node.js, you can host Java, you've got virtual machines, so you can put anything as well. They have infrastructure for anything now.
And how about the visual?
Sure. So for SoundGecko, one of our 5 user markets we identified were people with visual impairments. So
What percentage would you say are visually impaired?
20%. It's literally like we have 5 like big groups. We've had people like judges in Texas use it for when they are reading case notes, but they want to listen to something else. Some have actually, many lawyers have actually used it because a few people are stuck reading like case notes and trying to compile arguments and stuff, and they're apparently locked in a room with nothing else. So they listen to articles and music as well as it to try and break it up. But a really cool thing about that is we start to understand the different kind of customers we have that we didn't even realize we would have. And from there, more opportunities present themselves. So just launching anything and just listening for feedback is quite helpful.
What app is in the news catalog?
Is that sorry?
Yeah, that app is on the news catalog.
Yes.
Why is it not in lifestyle or something?
Sure. Strategic. So first, the obvious one was entertainment, like sort of an entertainment or music. We thought we might be drowned out from even getting close to the top 5 like positions in the App Store. We managed to get to I think number 2, damn it, on the news category on launch day. But that's something we can change. So it's part of our intention in the coming months to just try changing that. When we do a few big announcements, we'll try with that backing and with some leaky holes fixed and with some more support and advertisements is to change that category. Because different categories get different levels, especially in the iTunes store at least, different levels of impressions. So entertainment is one of the big ones, but we wouldn't want to compete against Candy Crush or whatever.
You said about government use of grants and government funding. Which ones did you go for? Which ones did you get?
So we went for a few Multimedia Victoria grants. So those ones paid for as long as you were presenting or going to a conference of some style and was relevant to your business. They will pay for I think up to 50 cents on the dollar for flights and the ticket price and sometimes accommodation. We also went for Commercialisation Australia, which is the big federal one, and we managed to get that, and so they match dollar for dollar what you have in your bank account when you get it, but that one took a long time to get, so they're all very relative to each other. So the Multimedia Victoria or MMV grants are quite easy to get. I think we've done like 4 of them or something. You can do 2 a year just for trips. So the first one you do, you've got a cool template for the second one. The Commercialisation Australia one was a lot harder and a lot more of a time sink. But there's also other different levels, like you can get vouchers for hiring people that you haven't worked with before as like a contractor, and I think that's up to 50 grand. You just have to justify like writing what you're going to use it for, milestones. But there are actually companies out there that will help you, which we used, to help write these big proposals because they're so big you need actually assistance, and they actually give you someone to help manage your application because it's so detailed.
Great. All right.
Cool.
Thanks very much, and especially as Andrew pushed that together in about the past sort of half an hour. So it was a fantastic presentation.
And my business dev co-founder would shoot me unless I said, yeah, 5-star ratings, please. Download would download again and get Omny on iPhone and SoundGecko if you like.
We just signed up for the Android mailing list. So
Sweet. Oh, and we're also hiring. So if anyone's interested to find out more or anything like that, this is the sort of tech we use. Please shoot me an email. And also feel free to shoot me an email if you want to ask any question at all about anything. It's fine.
great. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
And have a good holiday season, and we'll see you all again next year. Thanks for coming. Thank you.